Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming back to the Love and Betrayal channel. Today, I have a new and quite interesting story to share with you. If someone had told me a year ago that I would become my own husband's mistress, I would have laughed or cried, or maybe both, because what kind of twisted reality is that? I used to think I was smart. I used to think I knew my husband. And most of all, I used to think I mattered. My name is Alina Carter, 32 architect, married to the charming, successful, picture-perfect Ethan Carter. From the outside, we were a power couple, glamorous vacations, dinner parties, smiles for the camera. But inside, I was slowly unraveling, and I didn't even realize it until I met her. She was called Elle, mysterious, gorgeous, and apparently Ethan's mistress. At least that's what I was told. I found out in the most cliché yet devastating way. Anonymous email attached with photos. Ethan with her in restaurants, holding hands, his smile glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. It felt like being punched in the lungs, not because he cheated, but because I didn't even feel surprised. My body went cold as I stared at the woman in the photos. She wore a long trench coat, big sunglasses, red lips, her hair, curled slightly at the end, falling over her shoulders. Familiar. You're too familiar. I enlarged the image, and then my heart nearly stopped. It was me. No, not exactly me, but it was someone who looked just like me. Same bone structure, same eyes, but sharper makeup, a different style, more seductive, confident, powerful. It was as if someone had taken me and redesigned me to be someone Ethan could fall for again. I remember standing in front of the mirror that night, tracing my face with trembling fingers. Was I imagining things? Was this some sick joke? I thought about confronting him, but I didn't. Instead, I watched I watched it, and I waited. The next few weeks were a blur of confusion and fear. I followed him once, only to watch him meet her at a bar downtown. I watched my husband lean in and whisper to a woman who could have passed for my shadow. And when she turned her head to kiss him, I saw it again, that same angle, that same curve of the smile. It wasn't just resemblance anymore, it was terrifying imitation. And then it got worse. One night, Ethan came home late, again. He wrapped his arms around me like everything was normal, like he wasn't out there touching another woman's skin. That looked like mine. I missed you today, he whispered into my hair. I swallowed hard. Did you? He didn't answer, he just kissed me, deeply, passionately. And suddenly I understood. He wasn't cheating on me with another woman. He was cheating on me with another version of me. I spiraled. I stopped sleeping. I began to dig, harder, deeper. That's when I found it. A burner phone, hidden in the bottom of his gym bag, dozens of texts sent to Elle. You make me feel alive again. She's so dull now. You're the woman I truly want. Let's start over, just you and me. I scrolled in silence until I saw the last message. It's time she said. It's time and she disappears. My blood turned to ice. In that moment, I realized something horrifying soon. I wasn't just losing my husband. I was losing myself. My hands were still trembling when I dropped the burner phone. The weight of those last words, it's time she disappears, echoed through my skull like a scream trapped inside a vacuum. Disappear? Who? Me? I stood there in our walk-in closet, staring at the rows of perfectly ironed suits, the cologne bottles he lined up like trophies, and the expensive watch he wore when he went to see her. The normalcy of it all made my skin crawl. How long had this been going on? How long had I been living with a man capable of manufacturing an affair so precise, so manipulative, that he didn't just cheat, he replaced me? Over the next few days, I played the role of a quiet, clueless wife. I cooked, I smiled, I kissed his cheek. But inside, I was a storm waiting to erupt. I studied every detail, his movements, his phone calls, his glances. And then, like a puzzle piece falling into place, I remembered something. 6 months ago, he encouraged me to start therapy. Maybe you need to talk to someone, he had said, gently brushing a strand of hair from my face. You've seemed off lately. At first, I resisted, but he insisted. Even offered to set up the appointments, and he did. He introduced me to a woman named Dr. Harper Wren, a therapist with a soothing voice, kind eyes, and a private office across town. She'd always been warm, always asked about my feelings, about Ethan. And now, in hindsight, something felt off. Why had I never seen another patient in her waiting room? Why had she recorded every session with such detail, sometimes even asking me to describe Ethan's ideal woman? Why did she always suggest I reclaim my identity in small, strange ways? I felt sick. I pulled out my laptop that night, searching everything I could about Dr. Harper Wren. What I found shattered me. There was no license under her name, no professional record, no affiliation with any therapy board. She didn't exist. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Ethan hadn't just created a mistress. He had created a version of me using me. He sent me to therapy not to help me, but to study me, to understand my insecurities, my weaknesses, my thoughts, so he could mold someone else to become everything I wasn't anymore. Maybe Elle was real. Maybe she was someone he'd met, but she had become me under Ethan's design. He crafted her into the woman he missed, not the woman he had. I went back to the burner phone. This time I dug deeper. Texts, voice messages, even photos. There were pictures of me and Elle, side by side. One labeled before, the other after. My breath caught in my throat. He didn't just want to cheat on me. He wanted to reprogram his world with a version of me he could control. But why? Why not just leave me? Why go through all this effort, this twisted game? I decided to meet up, not as a confrontation, but as research, as survival. I messaged her from the burner phone, pretending to be Ethan. Let's meet at the old pier, 6 p.m., just you and me. I waited in the shadows. When she appeared, I almost cried. Because it was me. Not just the face, not just the clothes, but the way she walked. The tilt of her head, the perfume I used to wear. She was me in every way, except one. She smiled like she didn't know pain. I stepped out. She froze when she saw me. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but confusion. Are you Elle? I asked, even though I knew the answer. She blinked. No, I'm Ava. Ava. So she wasn't even Elle. Ethan had given her that name. Just like everything else he gave her. We talked. Or rather, I asked, and she answered, hesitantly at first, then with growing dread. She met Ethan at a retreat. He'd approached her with warmth and curiosity. Told her she reminded him of someone he'd loved and lost to mental illness. He said his wife no longer recognized him, that she was a ghost of the woman he once knew. He told Ava she could help him heal, that she could become his muse. I didn't know he was married, she whispered, eyes glistening. He said you were gone, that you were in a facility, that you'd never come back. Gone? Facility? I staggered back, my mouth dry. Was that his plan all along? To convince everyone, including Ava, that I was mentally unstable? To erase me without killing me? He didn't want a divorce, he wanted a replacement. That night I stared at the ceiling for hours, not crying, not broken, but boiling. He had crossed a line no one should ever cross. He didn't just cheat on me, he rewrote me. And now I was done playing his version of the story. Because if he wanted to see what the real Alina was capable of, he was about to find out. I used to think fear was a cold thing, but now I know better. Real fear, it burns. It simmers under your skin, it sharpens your senses. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you watch. And that's exactly what I did. I watched Ethan. I watched his lies unfold like clockwork. I watched myself, no, the version of me he created, be kissed, adored, and promised things that were once mine. But I didn't cry anymore. I had no more tears left. Now I was something else. I stood in front of the mirror the next morning, staring at my reflection. My skin looked pale under the soft lights. My eyes were tired but focused, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a woman lost in her husband's shadow. I felt like someone who had survived a fire and was now ready to start one of her own. He wanted me erased? He wanted to control the narrative? Then let's write a new story, one he couldn't predict. Step one was simple: become the woman he feared. I didn't need to pretend to be someone else. I just needed to remember who I was before he dimmed my light. I reopened my personal design studio, the one I closed years ago to support Ethan's business expansion. I reconnected with my old clients, old friends, old ambitions. Every part of my old self that had been shelved, I brought back. Ethan noticed. "You're glowing," he said one night, watching me from across the dinner table. I smiled without meeting his eyes. "Maybe I've just been sleeping better." He reached for my hand. "I've missed this version of you." I looked at him, feeling nothing. This man who once made my heart race, now only made my skin crawl. Meanwhile, Ava and I stayed in touch, secretly. She was still reeling, confused, betrayed. I didn't blame her. She was just another pawn in Ethan's twisted game. But now, she wasn't his pawn anymore. She was mine. "I think he's planning something," Ava whispered one afternoon, over coffee in a quiet part of the city. I leaned in. "Like what?" She hesitated. "He asked if I'd be willing to move away with him, somewhere no one knows us." My fingers tightened around my cup. So this was it. He wanted to disappear with her, without divorce, without consequences. Erase me from his life. Did he say when? When? I asked. Not yet, but soon. He said something about closing of the chapter permanently. The next day, I began gathering evidence. Every text, every email, every transaction. I even found audio backups from my therapy sessions with Dr. Harper Wren. With a little digging, I discovered that Harper wasn't just fake. She was an actress Ethan had paid. A failed theater student, no real job, hired to manipulate me and feed back my words. It was beyond betrayal. It was psychological warfare, but it also gave me what I needed. Step 2 was harder. Let him think he's winning. I went back to playing the wife, cooking his favorite meals, laughing at his jokes, wearing the perfume he loved. But every night when he kissed me, I wondered if he imagined he was kissing her. Or worse, me, but the version he designed. Then came the call that changed everything. From Ava. He asked me to meet him tonight, she said, her voice shaking. He said it's the last time, that after tonight, she, meaning you, won't be a problem. My blood froze. Tonight. He was going to end it. Me. I called my lawyer. Then I called the private investigator I'd hired weeks ago. Tonight, I told him, follow him, don't lose sight of him, no matter what. Hours later, I stood outside our home in the cold evening air, staring up at the windows that once framed my fairy tale. A fairy tale that was about to collapse, but this time not on me, on him. When I returned inside, Ethan was sitting on the couch, sipping whiskey. He looked up, surprised to see me back so early. Hey, he said, flashing his trademark smile. You okay? I nodded, just tired. Long day. He stood, walking toward me with slow, measured steps. Then he cupped my face in his hands. You know I love you, right? I stared into his eyes, and for the first time, I smiled. I know, that night he left, said it was a business meeting, but I knew better, and I wasn't alone, because 5 blocks away, a car followed him through the rain. Camera ready, recorder on, and the real story was just beginning. Rain was falling like a whisper from the sky, soft but steady. I watched the water run down the windows of our bedroom, the same room where Ethan once made promises he now broke in the arms of another woman, my shadow. But this wasn't a night for pain. This was a night for truth, and I was ready. The clock struck 10:03 p.m. when I received the first message. Target has entered hotel, room 804. My heart clenched, not from fear, but from focus. My private investigator, Dean, was precise and reliable. He was former law enforcement, now specializing in high-profile infidelity cases, and Ethan had no idea he was being watched by someone far more dangerous than any mistress, a wife who knew the truth. Meanwhile, Ethan thought he was in control, thought he was slipping out for a final rendezvous, thought he'd walk away from his double life, taking only the woman he molded from my ashes. He didn't know that I'd been steps ahead, because while he played games, I built a case, not just of cheating, but of emotional manipulation, psychological abuse, fraud. Dean sent the next photo. Ethan and Ava, inside room 804, close, intimate, comfortable. The man I once trusted with my soul was now whispering in another woman's ear about how to end me, but Ava wasn't just listening. She was recording. 2 days before, I gave her a voice recorder, hidden in a delicate pendant necklace. She hesitated. Are you sure? I smiled. You deserve the truth, Ava, just like I do. And now it was all coming together. From my living room, I sat in silence, listening through Dean's audio relay. At first, it was small talk. Then Ethan's voice shifted, lower, colder. She's slipping, Ava. I think the stress is getting to her. Ava played along. You mean Alina? Yeah, she's paranoid, irrational. I've spoken to Harper. She agrees it's time to take action. My stomach turned. Harper, the fake therapist. I've already prepped the papers, Ethan continued. If I can get her to lash out just once, we can make the psychiatric claim stick. I froze. Psychiatric claim? That was his endgame. He didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to institutionalize me, get full control of our assets, our home, my life. He wanted to bury me alive, legally. Ava's voice trembled. And then what? Ethan chuckled. Then it's just you and me, Elle. He still called her that. Elle, the name he made for her, the name he branded her with. He had never loved either of us. We were just roles in his twisted fantasy. My phone buzzed. Dean again. He's leaving, alone. Ava's still inside. Perfect, because step 3 was already in motion. I changed into a black coat, grabbed the USB drive with all our gathered evidence, and made one final call to my attorney. Tonight's the night, I said. She replied with one sentence, "It's all in place." When Ethan returned home at midnight, I was waiting in the kitchen, lights low, wine glass in hand. He walked in like nothing had happened, wet hair slicked back, jacket draped casually over his arm. "Hey, babe," he said, flashing that practice smile. "Couldn't sleep?" I smiled back. I was just thinking about us. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Yeah?" I leaned against the counter. "You ever wonder what makes a marriage survive betrayal?" He chuckled nervously. "I wouldn't know." I stepped closer. "It's not forgiveness." He raised an eyebrow. "No?" I shook my head. It's evidence." I placed the USB on the table. He stared at it confused, and then I slid the burner phone next to it. And finally, the pendant necklace. His face changed instantly. The blood drained from his skin. "Lena," he said slowly, "what is this?" I tilted my head. "It's everything, Ethan. Every lie, every manipulation, every twisted plan." He moved to grab my wrist. I stepped back. "Don't," I warned, my voice steady. He froze. "You're done, Ethan." I could see the war beginning behind his eyes, calculations, excuses, charm mode loading, but I was already 10 steps ahead. "I filed a protection order," I continued it. "Temporary now, permanent by next week." He laughed bitterly. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" I said, picking up the remote. With one click, the audio recording played through our smart speaker. "We can make the psychiatric claims stick." His eyes widened. "You recorded me?" I nodded, and we both did. Ava walked into the room. Ethan flinched like he saw a ghost. She didn't say a word, just stood there, silently confirming the end of his illusions. He looked between us, his wife and his puppet, now united. He reached for his jacket. "I'm leaving." "Not before the police come," I replied. His head snapped up. "Dean's called them," I added. "He heard everything too. You'll be answering a few questions tonight." He opened his mouth to argue, but the sirens outside silenced him. Blue and red lights flickered through the curtains. And for the first time, Ethan Carter had no script left to follow. No version of me to manipulate, no shadow to hide in. He tried to erase me, but instead, he set me free. There's something haunting about silence. The kind of silence that comes after the storm, after the screaming ends, after the sirens fade, after the man you once loved is taken away in handcuffs, no longer the center of your world, but the center of a police report. That silence, it's not peace, it's a pause. The kind that forces you to look around and realize everything is broken. But at least now I could start rebuilding. Ethan's arrest had made headlines, local ones at first. Successful businessman accused of psychological abuse and identity manipulation. It sounded surreal, even reading it, like something from a movie, but I wasn't the audience anymore. I was the survivor. The court battle was just beginning. I filed for divorce, of course, but more than that, I filed to have his assets frozen, pending investigation. I wasn't after revenge through money. I just wanted space, safety, freedom. I moved out of the house and rented a small apartment across town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, a blank canvas, just like me. For weeks, I stayed quiet. Rebuilding isn't loud, it's slow, it's painful. Some days I couldn't get out of bed. Some nights I still dreamed of him, whispering lies in my ear, calling me Elle, gaslighting me into thinking I was the problem. But each time I woke up, I reminded myself he wasn't here, and I wasn't her anymore. Ava reached out often. We weren't friends, not really, but we were something deeper, two women who had escaped the same prison. One afternoon, she came by with flowers and a trembling apology. I didn't know, Alina," she said. "I swear I didn't know." I believed her, because I had once been her, lost, hungry for validation, blind to manipulation wrapped in a smile. "He used you," I said gently, "the same way he used me, but it's over now." She smiled through tears. "I'm moving out of the city, starting over." I nodded. "That's good." We hugged like sisters of war, scarred but stronger. Therapy helped, real therapy this time, with a licensed, grounded, no-nonsense woman named Diana, who didn't ask me to change my lipstick or describe my husband's fantasy. She asked me about me, the girl I used to be, the woman I wanted to become, the strength I forgot I had. One day she said something I'll never forget. "Healing isn't about pretending it didn't happen, it's about making sure it doesn't define you." That sentence became my anchor. I returned to architecture slowly, took on small projects, then bigger ones. For the first time in years, I designed something just for me. A quiet studio with tall windows, warm wood, and shelves of books that made my soul breathe again. I called it Elle and Alina's Studio, not because I forgave what that name meant, but because I reclaimed it. Then, one evening, as I was closing up, I received a letter. No return address. Just my name, handwritten. I opened it, curious. It was a single sheet of paper. You think it's over, but some stories don't end, they evolve. There was no signature, no sender. Just tread. I didn't sleep that night. Was it from Ethan? No, he was still in custody, awaiting trial. But, maybe someone someone who knew? The next morning, I contacted Dean. He promised to look into it, but something inside me shifted again. A flicker of unease, a shadow I couldn't place, like being watched through a mirror I couldn't see. Had I truly escaped, or had I only scratched the surface of something deeper? I went to the window, staring out into the city, its lights blinking like secrets in the dark. The silence returned. But this time, it didn't scare me. It warned me that maybe Ethan wasn't the only one with secrets, and that my story was far from over. I held the letter in my hands for hours, reading the same sentence over and over again. You think it's over, but some stories don't end, they evolve. It was written in smooth, deliberate handwriting, confident, calculated. This wasn't a threat born out of anger. This was a message from someone who still held power. And that terrified me. Dean ran a check on the envelope, no fingerprints, no postmark. It hadn't been mailed, it had been delivered by hand. Someone had been here. Someone who knew exactly where I lived and wanted me to know they were watching. I changed the locks the next morning. Security cameras, motion sensors. Not because I was afraid of Ethan, he was still in custody, but because fear has a new face when you realize the man you escaped may have only been the beginning. I visited Ava again just in case. She was staying with her aunt in a quiet beach town, far from the city. When I showed her the letter, her hands trembled. "I've never seen this before," she whispered, "but I have heard that phrase." I looked up sharply. "What?" She nodded slowly, searching her memory. "Ethan said it once, months ago, right after we, got close." "What exactly did he say?" "He said, 'You think you understand me, Ava, but some stories don't end, they evolve.'" My stomach dropped. So he had used that phrase before. But why now? From who? Later that night, as I flipped through an old sketchbook from my early career, something fell out. A business card. Dark navy blue. No logo. Just a name, Kieran Vale, and a number. My breath caught. That name, I hadn't heard it in years. But once upon a time, he meant everything to me. Kieran was my first love, the storm before Ethan. We met in college. He was brilliant, mysterious, intense. He saw the fire in me before I even believed I had one. But the relationship, it was chaos. He was controlling, manipulative in a way that felt like poetry. One day he'd write me love letters, the next he'd disappear for days. I left him after he tried to isolate me from my family, my friends, blocked his number, cut all ties. And then Ethan came into my life, stable, safe, kind, or so I thought. What if the truth was this? What if I didn't escape Kieran? I was just passed from one manipulator to another. What if they were connected? I called the number. It rang once, twice, then clicked. A smooth voice came through the line. "I was wondering when you'd call." I froze. "Kieran?" A low chuckle. "You sound different, Alina. Stronger. I like that." "What do you want?" He didn't answer immediately. "Then, have dinner with me. One conversation, no games." I should have hung up, but my fingers wouldn't move. "When?" "Tomorrow, 8 p.m. the old cafe near campus." He hung up before I could reply. I stood there in silence. Why now? Was he the one behind the letter? Or had was he a piece of a puzzle I never knew existed? The next day dragged on like a slow drum beat. I dressed carefully that night, not to impress him, but to protect myself. A black blazer, no jewelry, flat shoes, just in case I had to run. I arrived at the cafe 5 minutes early. He was already there. Still dressed in black, still smug, still dangerous, but older now. Sharper, like a snake that had learned to wait before striking. "Alina," he said, standing to greet me. I didn't offer my hand. "Let's get to the point," I said, sitting down. He smirked. "Still fiery. Good. Did you send the letter?" He shook his head. "No, but I know who did." My heart pounded. "Who?" He leaned in. "Wait." I leaned in, his voice low. "There's a circle, Alina, a very quiet, very dangerous one. Men like Ethan don't operate alone." I blinked. "You're saying..." "He was part of something, a group. They call themselves the Architects. I almost laughed. That sounds like a bad thriller novel. Doesn't mean it's not real. He slid a folder across the table. Inside photo notes, files of other women. Other lives, other identities. Each woman had one thing in common. They were rebuilt, reshaped by men who needed control more than love. And Ethan was listed in more than one file. He was being groomed, Kieran said. They trained him, gave him resources, even gave him Harper Wren. I stared at the folder, bile rising in my throat. How do you know all this? He looked at me then, really looked. Because I was one of them. I pushed back from the table. Don't contact me again, I said, voice shaking. Alina, no, you don't get to crawl back into my life just because your empire's collapsing. I walked away, but his final words followed me into the night. You think this ends with Ethan? You haven't even seen the beginning. The folder Kieran gave me sat on my desk for 3 days. 3 days of silence, 3 days of knowing and not knowing. 3 days of asking myself one question over and over again. What if it wasn't just Ethan? What if I had been living inside a machine far more sinister than I ever imagined? On the 4th day, I opened it, not out of curiosity, but because the only thing scarier than the truth was being left in the dark. Inside were 9 profiles, 9 women, all from different parts of the country, different professions, different backgrounds. But the pattern, identical. Each woman had dated or married a successful, well-connected man. Each had reported sudden psychological stress, paranoia, breakdowns. Each had been labeled unstable by someone close to them, and each had disappeared, some to mental institutions, others just gone, vanished. And in every case, there was another woman who appeared, a woman who looked eerily like the original. I couldn't breathe. I was not special. I was not the only one. I was part of a system, a blueprint, a test subject. And Ethan was just the engineer who executed the plan. I dug deeper. There were names scribbled in the corners, code names, initials, but one name stood out, GH. Beside it, a note in Kieran's and handwriting, the one who started it all. I picked up my phone and called Dean. I need you to find someone, I said, codename GH. He paused. You think that's the leader? I think it's the architect of the architects. While Dean worked, I returned to therapy. Diana listened without flinching as I laid it all out. The organization, the profiles, Ethan's role, Kieran's warning. She didn't call me crazy. She didn't ask if I had proof. She asked only one thing. Are you ready to fight something bigger than heartbreak? And I surprised myself when I answered yes. 2 days later, Dean sent a name. Gideon Hale. A reclusive tech investor in his 50s, no social media presence, no wife, no kids, but a long history of funding behavioral research projects across the country. Sounded innocent enough until Dean found financial links between Gideon and Ethan's company. Millions in consulting fees, all marked confidential. I needed to get closer, and I knew the only way in was through Kieran. I hated myself for it. But this wasn't about pride anymore. This was war. He met me at a rooftop bar, classy, low-lighting, his idea of charm. You look well, he said, sipping whiskey. I sat without a word. He smiled. So, you opened the folder. I want to meet Gideon Hale, I said. He stilled. You're not ready. I leaned forward. Don't tell me what I'm ready for. Kieran sighed. Fine, but know this. Once you see his world, you can't unsee it. He handed me a key card. No names. Just go to this address. Ask for room 307. That night, I stood in front of an unmarked glass building downtown, minimalist, corporate, cold, the kind of place you wouldn't look at twice. But inside, everything screamed, private, controlled, untouchable. I flashed the key card. A soft beep, a green light. I entered. Room 307 wasn't a room. It was a gallery, lined with digital profiles, dozens of women, photos, psychological reports, voice clips, recorded therapy sessions, and then there was me. Projected across a sleek black screen. My name, my age, my breakdown. A side-by-side comparison. Alina Carter of an L improved profile. My heart stopped, and they hadn't just studied me. They'd built me, deconstructed me like a blueprint, then designed a new version, one more compliant, more desirable, more controllable. Behind me, a voice spoke. Deep, calm, calculated. You weren't supposed to find this place. I turned slowly. There he was. Gideon Hale, immaculately dressed, hair silver, hands folded. Who are you? I whispered. He smiled. The man who saw potential where others saw mess. My voice cracked. You destroyed lives. I perfected them. I stepped forward, fury rising. You turned love into a laboratory. He nodded, because love, my dear Alina, is the most manipulable variable in human psychology. I wanted to scream. Instead, I pulled out my phone, recorded everything. He didn't stop me. I suppose you think this will ruin me, he said. I know it will. He chuckled. You're brave. I admire that. And then he walked away. That night, I sent the footage to Dean, to my lawyer, to every journalist who'd covered Ethan's case. It would take time. But the truth was out, and I would not be silent anymore. The video went viral in under 48 hours. It began as a whisper on an underground forum for survivors of psychological abuse. Then someone posted it to a whistleblower blog, then Twitter, then everywhere. My face, my story, my voice, calm but shaking, as I filmed Gideon Hale in his secret gallery of altered lives. The world watched, and for once, it listened. The reaction was swift. Ethan's trial was pushed up. New charges were added: racketeering, psychological assault, conspiracy. The press dubbed it the identity cult. Gideon Hale, Gideon Hale. Hale disappeared. Some said he fled the country. Others said he was protected by people too powerful to name. All I knew was that room 307 was scrubbed clean within 24 hours of my visit. Dean barely made it back with the original footage. They moved fast, but I had moved faster. Reporters camped outside my apartment for weeks. Victims reached out from around the country, and one day I received a letter. Not anonymous this time, just a name, Vivian West, one of the 9 women in the folder. She had been locked away in a psychiatric facility for 3 years, declared unfit after claiming her husband was trying to replace her. Now, because of me, she was free. I cried that night. Not because I was sad, but because I finally knew I wasn't crazy. I had never been crazy. They just wanted me to believe I was. Ava sent me a photo from her new life. A small bookshop by the coast, a golden retriever puppy, her smile finally real. You saved me, she wrote. I'll never forget what you did. But the truth? I didn't save her. She saved herself, just like I had to. Months passed. The headlines faded, the trial dragged on, and then one day, Ethan was sentenced. 15 years, not for love, not for cheating, but for what he did to me, for what he tried to erase. When I walked out of that courtroom, people applauded, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, like a woman who had run barefoot through fire and was now learning how to walk again. I went home and stood in front of the mirror, the same mirror where I once traced my own face, wondering who I had become. Now I knew. I was Alina Carter. Not Elle, not a version, not a shadow. Me, whole, flawed, reclaimed. Some nights I still flinch when I hear footsteps outside my door. Some mornings I wake up reaching for a man who isn't there. But every day I rebuild. Brick by brick, word by word, memory by memory. I started writing again. Not just designs, but essays. Stories of other women like me. Voices once silenced, now roaring back. I called the series The Mistress I Never Was, because now I understood. I was never the mistress. I was the truth. And truth always finds a way to rise.